Why, hello there, ladies and gentlemen, and welcome to The Sit Down. Today, I had the pleasure of sitting down with Mr. Josh Fernie, ex-RAF and now Homeland activist out of Scotland. Now, I reached out to Josh to talk a little bit about what Homeland actually is. If you're active in the political sphere, then you would have likely been following the activities of many of the, right-wing populist or nationalist groups. Supposedly Reform was one of them, but Britain First, UKIP, and Homeland is inevitably going to come up. They seem to be gaining a lot of traction via their focus on community politics and actually building communities from the grounds up, building grassroots infrastructure, rather than opting for what we see a lot in the modern political dynamic of these mass protests of hundreds of thousands of people, which I've always seen as maybe being good for morale, maybe good for alleviating that sense of isolation that we can often feel if you're on this side of the political spectrum, given the amount of left-wing, liberal, or even outright Islamo-globalist, communist stuff you see being pushed by the mainstream media, BBC, all of these other outlets that are just constantly in your vision all of the time. It's very easy to feel very isolated. A mass event like that shows that we are not alone. We are not alone in this. However, in terms of actually changing the dynamic of the country, that has to come from the ground up. In fact, that's what Homeland seems to have been focusing a lot on. And you see that if you follow their initiatives, spend a lot of time in the local communities talking to people, planting trees, which are actually seen as actual environmentalism, not the net zero tax scammy environmentalism that we see. Removing, whether you're biased to one side or not, like I have my own personal biases to other geopolitical conflicts, removing all foreign political graffiti in an effort to show that regardless of that, they're for the British people first, for the people of Wales, the people of Scotland, people of England, people of Ireland, the native people of these isles. That's encapsulated in their philosophy, which you can find in their constitution. I'm going to read you a little bit from their constitution now, where they outline the aims of nationalism in their view. We assert that nationalism, as defined by the party, represents the most natural worldview. Our aim is to advocate for its key principles and to enact policies that prioritize the well-being of our people over internationalist, economic, and progressive ideologies. They have 5 principles in which they encapsulate this philosophy. Their 5 key principles of nationalism are as follows. Self-determination, what we know as jus sanguinis. Now, jus sanguinis means right of blood. I'd never heard this before watching a certain video in which they outlined this on Homeland's X page. But by right of blood, we mean the principle of nationality law, where citizenship is determined by the nationality of one's parents, regardless of the place of the child's birth. There is also a nation state, the ethnic identity, and the homeland, hence the name of the party. And say what you want, do think their activities in their communities, even if you have reservations about certain rhetoric that some of the party have used in the past, as I do. Josh is very clear that they're not just an echo chamber on the inside. They're more of a melting pot. They have some that are more pro to one side of the conflict in the Middle East, for example, than the other. And they also have some of them, a lot of the prominent figures within it, the people that they talk to and their other activists, are kind of old school socialists that are actually very disillusioned with the kind of socialist system that we see nowadays. I think there's been a lot of things that have been said about Homeland, that they're far-right, Nazi, ethno-nationalist, racist, that even Kenny Smith has a Nazi tattoo on his chest, allegedly. But then there's also been accusations that they've been in bed with the really far-left, globalist organizations such as Hope Not Hate, that are pushing these open border, Islamophobic, complete and utter replacement of the ethnic population agendas, when, at least from what I've seen, they couldn't be further separate. They couldn't be further separate. It remains to be seen. It remains to be seen where these allegations are going to go. But we had a great conversation. No doubt that you'll walk away from it with a little bit more knowledge about what Homeland is doing, some of the activities that they've got planned for the future, a bit more about their philosophy. I hope you enjoy it. I'll hand you over to myself and Mr. Josh Fernie. Enjoy. Hey there guys, how's it going? And welcome back to either Evidence-Based Excellence or Voice of the Valleys, whichever one this will be going up on. It may be going up on both, who knows. But it's with your host, Mr. George Cresswell, and we got a great guest on the podcast today who I wanted to get on to talk about some things which seem to be going on in the world which are quite controversial, and with the state of the world that we live in, I think it's important to foster as many conversations as possible, even if with people we might not agree with or anything like that, even people we might have reservations with, because it's important. If anybody's going to make the best informed decision possible on things that are so important, it's best to have as much information in that regard as possible. And that's why I brought on today Mr. Josh, is it Fernie?
Yeah, Josh Fernie.
Perfect. From the Homeland Party, and I've been following their activities for a little while, as I think anybody will, whether because you agree or disagree with them. But they certainly seem to be making some inroads and have been far more focused on the community political element and actually building up communities. And some of their activities, as I pointed out on X, for example, have been, even if you have reservations on what maybe some individual members have said and stuff like that, it's very, very hard not to respect some just the basic community building and basic improvements that they want to make to their communities. And as a result, I wanted to learn a little bit more about it. So I'm going to hand you over to Josh now, just so we can tell you a little bit about himself, and then we'll see what topics we get into. Josh, thank you very much for coming on.
Oh, thank you for having me. So I think I kind of first got introduced to politics when I was 13, because that was when the July 7th bombings happened, 2004. And that was the first time I realised that there was this evil in the world, because even though I grew up in the 90s, I grew up after all the IRA and that, so I never saw the Irish, or didn't class the IRA as a terrorist group growing up, because I didn't understand what terrorism was then. But then, so I was 13, that happened, and then when I was 15, I read the book called Sold, which is about an English girl and her sister whose stepdad sell them to a village in Yemen. And so my eyes were constantly getting opened, and then I joined the military, followed in a lot of my family's footsteps, and went into the Royal Air Force. And there, you're also told that the enemy was ISIS. We were bombing Syria. So that was the like, as we call it, the CivNat political landscape was what all I really knew. I saw Muslims as the enemy, and as narrow-minded as that was all that had ever been pushed. And then as I got older, and then it was only really last year that my eyes were really open to, it's not just Muslims, because I was happy. I was very under the umbrella of, if they're a Christian, they've got to be okay. But then you start looking into the rape and sexual crime statistics coming out of Africa. Some of their highest Christian population is the highest concentration of the rape statistics. So that was, I started to look at the wider picture. As I was told, I was actually on the on Unity News Network, and it was them that started to make me realise, look into who was in charge, like Pfizer, COVID, look into Anthony Fauci, things like this. And it's just started making me realise that there's a whole other political world out there. It's not just what the mainstream media is pushing. There is another side to politics. And then, yeah, from then on, I started pulling on threads, could never really stop pulling on these threads. And the good thing about Homeland, because I'd left Reform by this point, because I'd originally joined Reform because I thought they were the answer. I was like, yes. And then very quickly started to realise, when this whole democratising period started, that it wasn't really democratized, and it wasn't really being this whole "we are going to reform the UK" like was promised. It was just more of the same. So then, yeah, I started going down the rabbit hole, and Homeland grabbed me as I was going right down that rabbit hole, as in red hot. And it's you'll seen the news story that the Ferret put out yesterday, saying that our chairman Kenny Smith was grooming as groomed teenagers, and what it was is he approached teenagers that were going down the national socialist route. So he was stopping them before they ended up in proper right wing extremism. And now, one of the guys, Robbie, he's 16 now. He's with us, and he's class. Like, he's got his head screwed on right. Do you know? When I was 16, I was a riot. Do you know? I've always played rugby and that, so I've always been about the social side of life. But Robbie at 16, he's got his head screwed on. He wants to do well in school because he wants the best for his people. And when Homeland grabbed me, I had so many questions because I was told Kenny wants an independent Scotland, and me being military, I'd only ever been told that I'd always supported the Union, but I didn't support the SNP. And then speaking to Kenny, he really showed me that this rabbit hole, it's fair enough to go down this rabbit hole, but if I end up spiraling down this rabbit hole the way the world that we're in just now, I'm gonna end up in prison or something. Do you know? So, but that's what Homeland do. They take you in, and they put you in the right direction rather than letting you go down the, oh, let's go burn down synagogues, let's go burn down mosques. You know, they direct your energy. Like for me, I love being involved in the community now, because growing up in the 90s, we used to have like New Year parties on the street where the whole street would be involved, and you knew all your neighbours, but that's totally gone now. Whereas with Homeland, they're trying to bring that back by doing things in the community that are going to make people be like, oh, I wanted to do that. I'm glad that somebody's finally done that. And then they look to how they can get involved. Because as you know, as yourself, that the minute people start that aren't in Homeland or don't support Homeland start speaking about Homeland, they instantly tell you that we're racist and neo-Nazis and all this. But what we actually are is just pro our people. We're not negative other people, we're pro our people. It comes from love.
I believe one of the sort of guiding principles of it is something, don't correct me if my pronunciation is wrong, it's like Jew sanguinis or something like that. Is that one
Yeah,
of the principles? Basically, like the native peoples have, I forget the exact term that's used because I did have a brief read over the Constitution and the values on the website. It's like an unalienable right to prosper in their homeland, that kind of idea. You
yeah.
brought that up because one of the things which go on, I'll let you speak a moment.
Yeah, so we believe that's another difference between the Homeland Party and a neo-Nazi party. We we are of the firm belief, we believe in true diversity, where all peoples have the right to self-determination in their own homelands. But if we have just this melting pot, a home for everyone is a home for nobody.
Get what you're saying. I get what you're saying. I just didn't know if you were going to say anything after that. That's why I
No,
paused
no,
before I
yeah,
started saying anymore. I didn't know if you're going to say anything after that. No, I understand what you're saying. 'Cause it's a little bit like when you mentioned the diversity thing, where the left in particular, they wanted to co-opt the term woman so that it could mean anything, and instantly, as soon as something can mean anything, it means nothing.
yeah,
So then they try to just devalue it, and I understand what you're saying there. What I did want to ask you about, because there's something that popped off literally last night on X. I couldn't help but notice the drama that was going on
yeah.
last night, and there were several memes that were created with regards to a specific issue. And I had to bring it up. I was going to message you to be like, I'm gonna ask you about these memes on the show tomorrow, but whether it's to do with this whole infighting on the right, but there was some big claims made by regarding Kenny in particular.
Yeah, so
Yeah,
I,
and
I've
trying to
never,
speak to that as making you guys out to be neo-Nazis and stuff like that.
Yeah, so I've never actually seen Kenny naked, so I couldn't tell you if the tattoo's there or not. But from what I get, this is what happened with the BMP. Like, I don't know if you watched Kenny getting interviewed by Mark Heath. He left the BMP before it folded. When people like Paul Golding and that were in the BMP, and that's UKIP and Farage were pushed as like because they couldn't get counter signaled by the left, say they couldn't get countersignaled by the left, so they had to make a party that seemed like they were on the same side of the spectrum as them, but a little bit more palatable to the public. So that's why UKIP were pushed. So I think that's what Paul Golding's tried to do with Britain First, because at one point Britain First could have gone places. You'd have to, don't quote me on this, but they were like one year the best small party or something like that, or best fundraised small party, and they've just blown all that money. And but see if we had a fraction of the money at Homeland that they've had at Britain First. Like we've already been over to the Bundestag and done a week with the AFD, because the AFD don't want to work with like Reform, UKIP, because they know that they're all foreign funded, whereas all our money is going to come from inside Britain, so that we have no foreign aspects trying to dictate to us where our policy is going to go.
They're foreign funded. They're
Well,
foreign
UKIP,
funded as a UKIP.
UKIP's America, turning point.
Right. Okay.
Yeah.
Yeah. Oh,
Britain
yeah. Yeah. Yeah.
Britain First has say Zionist backers, will we? Because
Okay.
that's why they push that anti-Muslim message, like anti-Islam message so hard. Whereas Homeland,
Okay. Okay.
we all represent Homeland. Like me as an activist, I go out and do everything voluntarily, just as the same as all the National Council are. They're all volunteers because nobody wants to um, sponsor a party that's not going to benefit them. And all these foreign agencies that would usually, whether that's money from Qatar, money from Israel, money from any of the foreign lobbies, because they can't sway us in any way, sway our decisions, there's no point in them throwing their money at us.
I understand what you mean. It was one of the things as well that I saw, and that's what even if I have say my own biases
Yeah,
versus, for example, like Israel and Gaza and stuff like that. Even if I have my own biases when it comes to in this country, and I can't remember exactly where it was. I believe it was somewhere in England, and it was in this this lovely countryside area that these lands are known for in a lot of
yeah,
ways. Like I'm from an area of the Welsh valleys. A lot of it is a beautiful place. Then there was political graffiti on both sides of that conflict, written on like just rocks and like all things about the environment. And the one thing I looked at is that a group of Homeland activists found out where it was and went up and removed all of it. And
yeah. It
at
was in
least I can say, like,
Yorkshire.
even with my own personal biases, when it comes to being in Britain, I can have a certain degree of respect, even if I'm like more pro one side than the other, just based
Yeah,
on my own personal viewpoint. That in my homeland, at least they're showing we don't want any, foreign political graffiti or any of that stuff here. We'll get rid of it all. At least I can say, oh, well, there's
exactly.
a certain degree of respect for that.
So you're saying about the like let's just say Middle East rather than trying to
Yeah.
like separate between the two. So with the Middle East, see the Homeland Party, we're not an echo chamber. Like you said at the very beginning, that having people of different opinions on to speak to you is very important. And that is important because there is nothing more dangerous than an echo chamber. That's why you end up with Muslim extremists. That's why you end up with far right extremists, because no one is there to counteract that argument. So they're taking everything as gospel. In the Homeland Party, even though we're told to stay out of we stay out of foreign politics, just because like you're saying it divides a country, divides your homeland for no other reason than personal preference. But we have people who are probably more Zionist than they are Muslim, in the sense that they still struggle to see like where all the funding and what our arguments might be, whereas there's others that are more pro-Palestine. Do you know? Like, so we have these discussions between ourselves. We just don't have them out in public because there's no point in us, yeah, trying to take people's focus away from our actual problems, which are in our homeland.
Yeah, and I completely agree in that sense, which is why and one of the previous guys I spoke to on the podcast, the topic, it was only a very small part of the conversation, but the idea of potentially like British people being conscripted to go and fight in these foreign conflicts, whether it be Ukraine, whether it be in the Middle East, whatever it may be, and literally. I think a lot of people can see it now. Is that no, the if there is a war, so to speak, or there is something which we need to deal with, it's at home because of what's been allowed to happen on the
Exactly.
home soil. And it's literally a case of it's like they want to, as in like the government, whatever it may be, conservative, Labour. From what I've seen over the last 25 years of my life, it doesn't really make a difference. They want to hold the door open to whoever may come in from wherever in the world to do whatever things, and then not only will they not use like the forces that we already have, the men especially in their local communities that would then in theory, if things were that bad, step up and protect children, women, all of these, they want to send them away.
I
And
know.
it's like it's just a oh, go on, I'll let you
Yeah, it's
it speaks
wild.
for
Like
itself.
I'm under the same impression as you. Like if there's a war zone, the people fleeing that war zone should be women and children. It should not be all their fighting age men that are that are the refugees. Like going back to the Second World War, all the kids that were it was all kids that were sent away. Do you know, kids and mums that were sent away. It wasn't any of the fighting age men. They were all sent straight to the front line. Whereas it seems to be the
Mm-hmm.
complete opposite now. And like you're saying, every time there's a crime committed, whether it's something small like shoplifting, stealing someone's phone, or all the way up to stuff like rape and murder, it's either dialed down or covered up in the name of successful multiculturalism. And that to me is abhorrent. And the more that people realize that what's going on, because I still speak to my mum, for instance. She's Tory. She's like Tory till she dies. So she's like,
Mm.
Penny Badenoch's great. But she can't understand, like, we're at the point now where something drastic has to happen to avoid this civil war that everyone's going on about. And our peaceful solution to that's remigration.
Mm. Again, it's that a moment. Just in your personal opinion, because I think I saw a post from, I think it was Steve Laws on X. It might have been yesterday or the day before, saying that people saying that it could be heading for civil war. It's not necessarily going to be heading for civil war. It's just going to be more of this managed decline unless something is done about it. Do you, for example, in your personal purview, see as civil war could be a possibility if things like this are not, taken care of in a sensible way?
Well, see, before I joined the Homeland Party, where between when I was in my limbo period between Reform and Homeland, if you'd asked me if I thought civil war was coming, I'd have been like tomorrow. Do you know? Like I was just
Mm.
as couldn't see any way out. All I saw was that getting worse, getting worse, getting worse until our economy totally collapses. Everyone's in poverty, and the whole world turns into the Thunderdome. Do you know? But when I
Mm-hmm.
joined Homeland and they started showing you, they first started talking change. You start thinking that maybe they're just talking the same talk that everyone has, and then every weekend, every week, people are out in their community trying to make actual differences. And it was then that I started to realize that people people do want a positive change, but they want to see that that change is actually going to come. So when I started to learn more about remigration, how it was going to benefit us, the fact that we'd save 40 billion just by cancelling all benefits and all money that goes into DEI programs and the asylum system. So I was just like,
So
there is a better way. So there is this money that we keep getting told's not there, but it's there for foreign wars and stuff. All this money it is there, but it's getting spent. The money is there for our people, but because it's being used on foreigners in our land as well, there isn't enough because, as you know, they multiply at about 7 times the speed that we do. So many of them are on benefit.
Mm.
So many of them don't know our language, so they need interpreters. So that's more money spent. They're all in social housing as well. They're all getting bus passes. Yeah, just oh, just
And
that's okay.
all of it coming out of,
Just
I
it,
get what you mean, and
right.
all of it coming out of taxpayer coffers, as you said, and the money is there, but it's just being, it's almost like they willingly, like whatever government, whether it's, I'm following the page on X at the moment, the Senate waste page, the Doge whales that they call themselves, and they're exposing all of the ways, like this octopus analogy where the Welsh government is giving money to all of these, like to the tunes of like tens of millions of pounds in some instances, to these like radically left wing, whether it's the I don't know, like Welsh Race Council or Anti-Race Council or whatever they're called, and all of these different things, whether it be these far left initiatives, net zero, deindustrialization, decarbonisation, and it's like it's quite clear that, and literally the prime example, I think, and I think you guys made a point of this as well in some of the videos you record. It's like you guys going out, and I quoted the post which you put up one time, and it was like going out and planting trees and doing all of this actually stuff to improve the community, improve the aesthetics of it, prove the quality of life in that, and that the government has the 500 million or whatever it is to take away from farmers in the UK via the inheritance tax, whatever it is. And then, funnily enough, it's the exact same amount, near enough, that they're going to send to foreign farmers in South America or whatever it is.
Yeah, that was an absolute bomb that dropped like 2 days later when that came out
Mm-hmm.
after. It was just, it's mad. Like, yeah. So the fact that, do you know that I think it might be 5 billion of that 40 billion is that's meant to be spent on foreign aid is spent on refugees that are in our homeland. So that's 5
All
billion.
right.
So that's an extra 5 billion as well. So all the it's just mad. See, when you start looking at the numbers, mate. So I started properly looking into the numbers when you asked me to come on here. Just to get them more clearer in my head. Because me being an activist, I'm more involved in the hearts and minds sort of things. Showing people that we're about nature. We're not about burning down buildings. We're about we're about making sure that all these ecosystems that have taken lifetimes to build all our even all the way down to like the insects that live on the farms, mate. Like
Mm.
we want it to be rich, fertile, and be able to grow. So sorry, I lost my train of thought there,
Yeah.
mate.
That's all right. I lose my train of thought all the time. I think literally one of the interviews I've done, I lost my train of thought like twice in 2 minutes. Every time I do to speak, it's almost like I've got nothing to say now. It's completely gone.
Yeah.
Um, but uh, but yeah, it's just the war on farmers at the moment is something
Oh
that's
yeah.
that's
Oh,
really, 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 really concerning. It's really, really concerning. And the biggest thing is it just seems that it's literally it's almost like this positive feedback loop. If you're familiar with those, where it's like
yeah.
a response is detected by the body, and in order to deal with that response, it upregulates the same mechanisms that go in place. And if it keeps going, then there's no end to it. There's no cut-off switch. It's literally like how things like, mass migration or mass immigration coming in, and then the government doing seemingly everything it can to impoverish the natural people that live here. The native people, whether it be taking full allowances away for OAPs, whether it be
Yeah.
what's the other one that recently passed, or it was like the national inquiry for rape gangs, kind of like a separate
Yeah.
issue. But again, all of these things that drastically lower down the quality of life, the prosperity, the ability for people to have families, have kids, prosper themselves, have a job, whatever it may be. And then when those issues inevitably bring down the economy, bring down quality of life for the negative people, and they stop having kids, the population starts to decline. Oh, well, we need more migration. We need more immigration coming into, and then it's that positive feedback loop that ultimately, if taken to its logical conclusion, is just going to result in replacement.
And that's it, because there really should be a benefit, like Viktor Orban's brought in Hungary, there should really be a benefit for the ethnic population to have big families in our homeland. And what I mean by that is tax breaks, financial incentives. But that can't be done while all this money is being wasted on foreign needs, shall we say, whether those needs are at home or away. But
Mm,
there's so much money wasted. Like that's where it all comes down to. Look at the house prices from when our parents were younger. You're talking. Oh, sorry. We're talking. I don't know why I'm apologising. It's me that's not the. All right. We're talking like 16,000 maybe, 7 to 16,000 pounds. Do you know?
mm,
Now you're talking like what 150 to 240 for a two-bedroom flat, depending on the area of Aberdeen.
mm.
Do you know? It is
Yeah.
madness. But we're still classed as our wages compared to the increase of them in say like our cousin country of America. Our like an engineer's wages over the years has not grown proportionally to grow with inflation.
Mm. Inflation's another massive one, I think, and we'll get into the main thing, which I think a lot of people hear the term and they think it's very controversial, or it brings up everything is viewed through the frame of World War II nowadays, right?
Yeah,
Everything is viewed through the lens of Hitler, right? Whether it be Donald Trump and Elon Musk. Obviously, Elon Musk was literally until about probably this time last year, or when he bought X, was a liberal himself, as he would say.
yeah,
He was on the left himself, right? And ultimately, I think that obviously the biggest policy that Homeland has, and the one they say is pretty much integral to what they want to do because it has the net positive effects on everything else, is this remigration policy, and how that's backed by what they call sensible nationalism. So I think those are the two things which I want to get into, because I'm a person, knowing myself, I'm very prone to radicalization and emotional outbursts myself. I haven't
right
done
there with
anything
you.
on that, but I know
Right there with
especially
you.
the younger generation. Obviously, every like communist regime throughout history will always target the children and stuff like that. And hearing you say that about like Kenny, for example, where he actually stopped these two teenagers, whatever it was, from actually fully going down that like national socialist route. A lot of people are pretty much trying to insinuate the opposite. So what in your purview, first off, is the difference between, I think we touched on it at the start, between the sensible nationalism of Homeland and like the crackpot nationalism, which is another term I've seen you used in your videos to describe this kind of thing.
Yeah, so the guys who were actually involved in the crackpot nationalism explain this better than I will. So your crackpot nationalism is going down the nationalist socialist route of just going, it's like it's the Jews, do you know, all this stuff, spray painting your racist stuff, going masked up and causing issue where it doesn't. You're causing not disruption. Well, yeah, kind of. You're causing disruption and anarchy on the streets, and that's not what we're wanting. We want people to educate themselves because we know that we have to work. We're going to have to work with different people of different backgrounds all across the world if we come into power. We know that. So there's no point in alienating everyone because you think that your race is superior to everyone. We want what's best for our people in our homeland. So this is where you move away from caring about other people in crackpot nationalism, where all you want to do is make this place so unpalatable for them that they leave. Or you would happily go down the violence route, the civil war route. You'll happily push for that, drop in like racial slurs on social media and things like that. Whereas with sensible nationalism, you don't put any of the energy into that. You put your energy into supporting your people. You put your energy where you're getting millions of people. Well, sorry, not millions, taking hundreds of thousands of people getting taken to the streets, causing damage, causing disruptions, and that causing disruptions to the systems. Great, but all that energy, if that 100,000 people went out at the weekend, that weekend and went and did stuff in the community, whether it was even something as little as litter picking, litter picking, planting trees, or even going and speaking to like the people who are in your neighborhood, just trying to get that family cohesion back, that feel that not everyone's a stranger anymore, because that's what's happened as we've moved into this technological age and we've all recoiled into our own personal spaces. Nobody
Mm.
socializes anymore. Like, not everyone drinks in the Homeland Party, but the pub is a very important place for politics, and Homeland knows that. Pub politics are important because that's where all the politics used to be discussed. So if we,
Mm.
if we stayed on crackpot nationalism and tried to push remigration that way, you'd be right in thinking that we're gonna round up we're gonna use the army to round everyone up, smashing in doors. It'll be like in the clips from like Schindler's List when they're smashing in people's front doors to take them in. Whereas with sensible nationalism, that's not what we're going to be doing. What we're going to be doing is make all the incentives for them to pass through Spain, France, Germany to get to us, because they want our health system and things like that. We're going to turn that tap off. There's going to be absolutely no benefits for them. Obviously, you're here illegally, you're gone. If someone has immigrate, if you're an immigrant and you commit a crime, you'll be gone as well. We shouldn't have to house the world's rubbish because we're this liberal state. We need to start
Mm.
standing up for our own people, and yeah, we're doing it. It's it. I It's hard to describe sensible nationalism without using the word sensible, because everything you're supposed to do is not bringing the party into disrepute.
Mm.
Because
I get what you mean. Go on.
all we've got is our name, and right now we are fighting to show people what that name really is. So it's important for
Mm.
us, because the Homeland do turn people away, and they've also kicked people out of the party, because if you're just going to take to Twitter and just immediately go for the Jews or immediately go for black people and stuff like that, that's not what it's about, because we know that we're going to have to work with people of all different um, ethnic origins, religious backgrounds in years to come. Fair enough, we don't want it to be in our homeland, but we still want those people to be able to thrive in their homeland. So we're going to have to work with them, especially when it comes to remigrating people, deporting them back to their homeland. We're going to want to be working well with the governments on the other side.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah, because I think what's going on in America at the moment with Trump's deportation or repatriation, whatever you want to call it, is like, I think it was the president of Colombia, I think it was, or the president of Mexico, I can't remember which one it was, saying we're not going to take these people back, and basically it's like, no, Trump. And literally about 5 minutes later, they were like, no, no, we'll take it back. I'll send my private plane. You know what I mean?
And that's the thing.
So it's like,
We'd have needed to turn off that tap well before we have any bargaining power, because obviously
yeah.
we've got no money in the bank to be trying to strong arm a nation into taking people.
Mm. I love it when whether it be, you know, and it's more of like a not in a denigrating the UK kind of way, but acknowledging the fact, exactly as you said, we've got this tap running that's eating all our resources, and we're no longer, due to deindustrialization, due to any of all of these massive left wing initiatives, we're no longer a mainstream player. You know what I mean? In a lot of like the geopolitical conflicts, I just love it when like whether it be like Ed Davey on X, or all these other like Lib Dem left politicians like, come on, but we need to be strong on this. We need to fight Russia and all these things. And did you see the clip of him that come out? I think it was literally just yesterday. Him in the doing that hobby horse stuff. Yeah,
Yeah, I put out
I'd
a
be like, I
video.
had to quote it, and I'd be like, I'm sure Putin's quaking in his boots right now.
Yeah, I put up a weak men video yesterday. I was meant to put it on TikTok, but I say the word that rhymes with great far too much for TikTok in it, because I'm talking about the rape and sexual assault statistics for Scotland and how they've increased in the
Mm-hmm.
17 years that the SNP have been in power. But I just end up putting it on
Mm-hmm.
on Twitter because I know it's safe on there. And like within a couple of seconds, the very first clip I put in is of Ed Davey dancing about on that horse. But before it slips my mind, see how you coming from the valleys, your area will have a specific feel and a specific look. Like for me, when I think about a place like Yorkshire, you think about that old country pub, do you know, where it's got like the thatched. So you coming from like somewhere that would have been very industrial, very mining, yeah? You mining.
Yeah.
So you will have a certain feel. There'll be a lot of green around you as well. Now, what the Homeland Party really wants to stop as well is all of that green going, all of that green being turned into a concrete jungle like London. We want people,
Mhm.
we want villages, towns, and cities to have their own unique feel so that it doesn't feel like you're going to every major city and you're going to the exact same place, maybe just a bigger or smaller version than the last.
Yeah, and that's the you mentioned that unique feel, and I look back at photos because the area where I'm from, you know, even going back from I can remember as say go back about 15 years, maybe just slightly longer than that, between 15 and 20 years. Um, I can remember being a kid, like a really young kid in primary school, and you know, the main street, the main high street, you know, it would be bustling. You know, there would be all sorts of things on there, and now I think they still have the weekly market on a Thursday, but now the main high street, there's a church on the end of it, doesn't get used anymore. There used to be a bank there. There's not even a bank. I think the closest branch to me now is in the capital of Cardiff, and that's about an hour away if I wanted to go to, you know, a brick and mortar bank. And but the thing is, there's about I'll count them up now in my head. One, well, that's a salon, so I guess that doesn't count. One, there's about in the span of one street about three or four barbers. You know, three or four barbers. A Greg's. There's a vape shop, possibly two, and there's like one butcher, one greengrocer and veg guy, and I'm like, what the hell has happened? It's like it's been completely decimated
That's
from how I remember it before.
every town and city has a vape shop and barber shops. That's all they've got now because nothing can last. Like in Aberdeen, this is something that drew me to the Homeland Party as well when they really started telling me about putting all this money back into local communities. 2014, 2015, there was the big oil downturn and it absolutely decimated Aberdeen. But the SNP left Aberdeen because it's always voted Conservative. They did not bail anybody out. We're talking tens of thousands of jobs were lost in days, and then the ripple on effect of our high street, Union Street, has never been the same. The beach, we used to, me and my family used to be down the beach most weekends. You know, we'd go for a family meal, all of us. Like, it was the Frankie and Benny's. We used to always use the Frankie and Benny's. But after 2016, everything started to deteriorate. Businesses couldn't hold on to business because no one had any money. And the SNP did nothing. So I think from that oil downturn, it's worked out to there's been about 100,000 jobs lost. Um, and that's taken from like data that I've got off the internet. You can easily search yourself as well. It's about 100,000 jobs have been lost because of the SNP's refusal to help Aberdeen. Now, all these places that they've let run down over the past 9 years, um, they're filling them up with a lot. We've got a big Nigerian population on George Street now, which is like our secondary main street. We've got all these asylum seekers are getting moved in. So our population, our ethnic Scottish population of Aberdeen, we've got a smaller percentage of a larger pot now because everyone that's had to move away or all these businesses that have closed down and they've had to move away, they've all been filled with foreign interests.
Mm. And again, it just seems that the government, especially with the SNP, and what you mentioned just a couple of minutes ago was the sexual violence epidemic. And I saw a headline. I think you might have shared it as well. It might have been that you shared it, that I come across it, or that I come across it. But I talked about it. It was from, I can't remember the name of the paper, but it said that the sexual violence in Scotland, I believe it was in Glasgow in particular, it might have been like the Glasgow Times or something like that, or Glasgow
Scottish
Express, whatever it might have been
Express.
called. Yeah, and it's now hit what they've called epidemic levels. And it's, you
It's
know,
wild, isn't it?
oh, go on.
Yeah, so they're now trying to say, so they've got, is it 3 or 4? But they've got all these asylum seeker hotels. They've been absolutely pounded in certain areas around the central belt, especially in Glasgow. They've been really pounded with immigration. And now it's at a level because little girls are being followed, children are being recorded in parks, sexual crimes and rape crimes, cyber sexual crimes are absolutely skyrocketing. That's like kids getting groomed. Like you see all the pedo hunters that there are now, and they do such a good job, and they risk their freedom because our liberal police believe in defending the feelings of a paedophile over an upstanding member of society that's trying to look after his own. Um, so yeah, and now it's got to this stage where the SNP might not be able to cover it up anymore, and they're talking about holding a summit. That's what it is. They're talking about holding a summit to deal with the epidemic of sexual violence. Just need to make everyone watch what's it, Adolescence.
Yeah, exactly. The documentary, as I think Keir Starmer called it once. The documentary, as he called it.
Yeah, he said
But
he was watching
but
it with
yeah,
the documentary with his daughters or something like that, didn't he? I was like, oh, shut up then.
yeah, I know. Just, and I think I can't remember who posted it, but literally it was saying that regime politician is mad that another regime politician, referring to Kemi Badenoch because she hadn't actually watched it yet or whatever. It was like the LB. Oh no, is it one of the LBC hosts? It was one of the LBC hosts, and he said regime mouthpiece, whatever it was, is upset that regime politician didn't watch regime fiction to make the policy based on it. But it's literally the sad thing is that they said that, piece of, because at the end of the day, because they're screwed whichever way they go, because people are calling it anti-white and anti-male propaganda because of the blatant, race swapping based on how the stats actually play out in real life, and the potential, one incident that people are alleging it was based on. But then I think Stephen Graham and the other guy's name, I've forgotten his name, has come out and said that it's not based on that one incident where I think it was a 15-year-old girl was murdered by a black classmate, I think it was. I can't remember her name. I talked about it yesterday, but it's either the case of where they have just blatantly race swapped to get away from the truth, or if it is just a work of complete fiction, why is it being legislated on? Why is it being pushed in schools and in Parliament and in all of these other places?
Yeah, and they didn't try and push. Is the documentary called Three Girls, and it's about.
I've seen it prop up, yeah.
Yeah, so they didn't push that, and they refused to do. They refused to push an inquiry into the actual grooming gangs, like the real life dangers, the real life misogynistic dangers that they're going on about. They refuse to actually look into them. But yeah, you whip up a bit of single shot episodes that show a white boy being bad. You can guarantee that's going in Westminster.
Absolutely. It's like it's just a case again, and what I think is important to teach. If I had a son in the future, especially growing up in this community, to teach young boys, especially, to be strong, because literally everything is against them. Literally everything is being shaped against them, whether it's all the narratives in the public space, the things that are coming down through Westminster, demonizing, what they call toxic masculinity, which, I think somebody, I think, put it best, as far as I've seen other people parrot this as well, is that toxic masculinity is actually a lack of masculinity. It's a lack of true masculinity, you know what I mean? What it means to be a man.
Oh, definitely.
They try to just Oh, go on.
Yeah, so they toxic masculinity used to be classed as those men that would just bottle it up, and they'd either explode, beat their missus, or they'd kill themselves. Whereas now, toxic masculinity is if you stand up for yourself, even verbally against a woman, or you try and say that, or hold a door for the wrong feminist, and that's toxic masculinity nowadays.
Hmm. But then they'd be just as mad if you didn't open the door, because then they have, like, a lot of them, they have that, like, entitled element. You know what I
Yeah,
mean? Whereas, it's
you're
like, oh,
damned
where are
if
all
you
the
do,
good
you're
men
damned if you
nowadays?
don't.
Yeah, exactly. Where are all the good men nowadays? But you hold the door open, being like, I could have done it myself. I'm a strong, independent woman.
But you're saying you're saying about lack of masculinity. So I've played rugby since a very young age. Played a high level of rugby when I was in the RAF. I played for the RAF select team as well. But I remember early 2000s, everyone used to go to the gym. Fair enough, it was because it was steroids were becoming fashionable and that, and everyone used to go to the gym. See now,
Mm.
not there's a very small fraction of the guys go to the gym, and when they do, like, lift like we used to. Do you know, like, I still lift like I used to, I still train like I used to. I just maybe do a lot more of it out in nature now, just because I'm trying to show that we care about nature with the Homeland Party. But men don't seem to, like, say men, boys don't seem to want to get involved in contact things now. Build, not enough people have been punched in the face. I truly believe that. Do you know, you see when someone's speaking to you now, or you see them speaking to somebody, and you're like, oh, you've never been punched before. Do you know? I,
Yeah.
I feel like men aren't engaging in things that actually work their testosterone, things like deadlifting, things like rugby, things
Mm.
like jiu-jitsu, combat submission wrestling, things like this that make you have to go into that fight or flight mode, I think are so important for developing a man, showing him his limitations as a human as well,
Mm.
teaching him to look
Yeah,
after his
absolutely.
people.
And I say that, especially somebody who was in school, who was not stereotypical, one of these, like, strong in terms of, like, character, in terms of personality, or in terms of physical strength. Was very much so like the unconfident recluse. But it's a natural part. I'll be the first to say, it's a natural part of good male development, because we work things. A lot of us, we work things out through not only words and conversation like we do now, but a lot of times, especially when you're growing up and you want to establish, whether you want to use a term like dominance hierarchy or whatever it is, there is a bit of rough and tumble.
Yeah.
They like to wrestle, they like to run at each other and do stupid things. And so it seems like, especially in public schools, and it's so dangerous at the moment. I watched a really, really troubling clip, and I think you shared it as well. As far as I know, it actually came out of Wales, my country, which is very, very troubling, that in public school, so we're talking secondary school, they were teaching, one of their lessons was teaching children about anal sex.
Oh,
And it's
yeah.
just like, has like, no place in a school whatsoever. But the increased, again, demonization of masculinity, and demonization of the activities that boys naturally like to do. It's almost like they're trying to make them, in their own mind, via scrutinizing these things and putting stigma on these activities that they normally like to do, into, not into girls, but into just what would turn out as just less masculine, less strong boys. And then you think, maybe there's an agenda at play here.
There's definitely one for you to look into yourself, is the the increase in kids thinking they're gay or they're trans has increased with
Mm.
the more that it's pushed in school. Because I'm not homophobic. Like, people, if people are going to be gay, they're going to be gay. I am totally against trans in kids. Like, I totally believe that trans is just a mental illness. In the 90s, we just used to call them transvestites. Do you know, I
Mm.
do not have a problem with gay people, but I do not think it should be pushed to younger kids, because kids, they're doing their best just to survive. Do you know, nowadays kids
Mhm.
should be taught about reproduction when the time's right, but it should be pushed from an angle about continuing our people. It shouldn't, stuff like teaching gay people to have sex. They don't need to have sex. Gay people, whereas a man and a woman need to have sex to reproduce. That's what should be
Hmm.
taught. That we shouldn't be confusing kids, being like, you might be gay. We should just go, life is so much simpler. Take all that rubbish out of
Hmm.
school. Yeah, because what you're doing as well is, whether it's advertently or inadvertently, they're sexualizing the children. That's what they're doing. And then these
Yeah.
drag queen story hours, like you're confusing them even more. You've got a man that should be somebody's dad sitting in front of you wearing more makeup than your mum would on a Friday night.
Mhm. Exactly, exactly, and it's funny how it's another meme that came out. Have you seen the meme where it's like the duck and it looks like it's saying something, and then the duck is like chasing the man in the next photo, and it says, "Why do you never want to read to old people in retirement homes?" It says, "Why do you never want to read to old people?" It's like. Mm, not
Some of
not to
those,
mention, I think the one thing go into that, they'll come in from that generation, that older generation. Obviously, I think a lot of them will be much less tolerant of that kind of stuff, and maybe that plays into it. But ultimately, obviously, it's the children that they want. Exactly as you said, it's the children they want to sexualize and prey on in that way.
the thing with the boomers is that they are more conservative in general because they grew up in a more conservative time. But because they grew up in this time, they're also like stuck in this Cold War period where you go, like something pops up, could be like a Muslim extremist, and you go to your grandparents, that's Russia, Granny. They're gonna be like, yeah. It's time to make people
Yeah.
realize that we have moved on, and maybe since like the 1990s when Russia pulled out of East Germany, maybe they haven't been our enemy, do you know?
Mm. At least there's certainly an assessment to do of like NATO's behaviors and stuff
Yeah.
like that, where obviously they've massively expanded stuff. But the thing is, the minute you try and bring this up, even from like my point of view, it'd be like, I don't like Putin. I'm not a Putin stan, as people often call them, just by observing the fact that there were agreements or there were like assurances put in place during like the Cold War and during these tumultuous times that NATO would not expand, and now you look at NATO and it's massively expanded pretty much right up to the Russian border. And then you need to look back in history, like America in the Cold War, for example, where the Russians obviously wanted to put nuclear missiles in Cuba. And what did America do to react to that, knowing that the threat was so close to the border? Well, it went to DEFCON 2 and very easily could have gone to DEFCON 1. So, it's again just strikes me as rules for thee but not for me. You know what I
So
mean? Like all of these.
I'm open about how my politics have changed. For example, like I used to think that only Muslims were bad. I supported Ukraine until I started to do my. I really need to stop hitting this desk because I just keep knocking this microphone thing. Um, yeah, so I went to do my own research, and I ended up collating a massive thread because during my research, I started to realize that maybe all the problems that have been getting pushed in the Baltics haven't all been coming out of Russia, because that's in the way that I'd been thinking of it, in the way I'd been told Russia's the problem in Europe, that's our problem in the East. But then when you start looking into it, you start coming across the name of a guy called Bruce Jackson, who went from being like the American envoy to being like the vice president of Lockheed Martin as the downturn for the defense industry was happening because Russia had pulled out of East Germany. So you start to build up this picture that it's, if you were to put the blame onto one country solely, it would be America, but it's not. It's NATO. But going through
Mm.
this, it's in my highlights, my Russia thread, and in there I've got from about 1991 through to 2015 time, or no, 2019, because I put in an entry recently, and it just shows what I found has actually happened over those years and why I've come to the decision that Ukraine are not the innocent party they'd always been painted out to be, especially when you find out that they started bombing their own people when they voted to join the Russian Federation. in like
All
2014.
right. Okay. So again, that democracy in action, so to speak.
Yeah.
Where what's going on. Obviously, France has just been the most recent example of the European, version of democracy, so to speak. And obviously, they tried to do the similar thing. I don't know if they've done, as far as like bombing their own civilians or whatever in Romania as well. Obviously, with Kalin Georgescu, I think that's how you pronounce his
Yeah,
name. It's just a case of, yeah, you can elect anybody you want as long as it's somebody that we like, as in like the liberal establishment.
yeah. So when
And
you look into that
that
whole
wasn't democracy last I checked.
yeah, when you start to look into that whole Ukraine debacle, it was the ethnic Russian population, um, had voted. Or first of all, it started where NATO wanted someone to be voted in. They didn't get voted in, so NATO funded a coup, and then the ethnic Russian population of eastern Ukraine voted to join the Russian Federation. So NATO funded the Ukraine army to start bombing their own people.
Is that part of the? I think the term given to it is it Euromaidan? Was that what it was? The Euromaidan
Yeah,
revolution? Is that what it was called during that time? Awful stuff, man. Farm.
also
No, it's just.
I do a lot of times sound like I'm really pro Russia, and I'm not. It's just the world is so pro Ukraine that I have a lot of debates with people about why they shouldn't really see it as one's good and one's bad, when really it's outside sources that are continuing this war and causing people to lose their lives.
Yeah, I think the biggest thing in that regard, where you said outside sources, especially, is it was a really good video with RFK Jr. I'm not sure where he was speaking, but he, basically tied into what everyone's interest is in Ukraine through like the farmland and the minerals,
Yeah,
and that the big defense contractors are
BlackRock.
obviously getting the contracts to then go in and rebuild Ukraine, and all of these big, massive, multinational entities like BlackRock and stuff like that. Well, then you start to see where the big foreign interest, as you said, is coming from, because they want the contracts to go in and rebuild, and then obviously Ukraine, and they won't be able to foot that massive bill themselves. So what are they going to have to potentially give up? That tremendously good farmland and minerals and whatever else. And then you start to see the larger games being played. The only thing, it's being played by politicians with the lives of innocent, just regular people, regular Ukrainians like you and me. And regardless of the political persuasion of some of them, you see troubling videos coming out all the time. Biggest thing is, it's almost like, I had this thought the other day. It's almost like what we used to do as kids, where you had the little toy soldiers on the base, and you had the red ones and the blue ones and the green ones, and you'd make them
Yeah,
pretend to have this big massive conflict, and you'd be the person looking up and imagining what's going on. Basically, like, Larry Fink and all of these other big world leaders are doing that, except they're doing it with people's lives and people's families and people's homes.
exactly.
And that's where, like,
Have you ever
it
heard
makes it really
anything
hard to
more?
then support it going on.
You heard anything more ludicrous than having to continue a war to make peace? Do you know, like everyone's saying, like just stop funding the war in Ukraine, and Stammer's like, we need to send British troops in, and then Swinney's like, I expect to see Scottish boots on the ground by the end of the year. It's like that's not how you make peace in the Baltics. Do you know?
Mm-hmm. A bit like oh, what was it? I see it all the time. The little graph about communism or socialism, where it is, and it always comes around. The solution to the problems that communism creates is more communism. A bit like the solution to the problems that war creates is more war, and it's like, maybe there's something wrong with the thought process going on here, guys. Maybe you might want to try something differently. As soon as you say that, maybe trying to get some kind of peace deal, not Putin sympathizer, no Russian bot, all of these things, and it's just like, no, I just want to see people stop dying.
Yeah, exactly. That's it. Just
Just because it could be me, and selfishly, it could obviously be, if things were to go south, it would be me being sent away, and then God knows what else they're bringing in behind me. Because at least in World War II, as we're going to view everything through the world lens of the World War, when kids were lying to get themselves into the military at like 14 years old, at least they were doing so knowing that their country was going to take care of their families and stuff like that. We don't have that security anymore.
No, we don't, and it would be different now because they only had one source of media, so they knew was the Germans were coming, do you know? Whereas now we see all the sides of the argument because of media. But yeah, I don't. This whole Ukraine thing, it does get to me. The fact that we're able to send so much money over there, like after, as you said, we cancelled the winter fuel allowances, but yet we're still piling billions into Ukraine.
Yeah, and it's like the class thing. Apparently, we have a 22 billion pound black hole, whatever figure and propaganda buzzword they want to throw out there. But again, when it comes to the word Ukraine or any other foreign interest in which there's a good chance they're going to be getting something back from it for themselves, they've always got the money for it. They've always got the money for it, and then you know we just had a letter come through from our gas and electric. Obviously, gas and electric is now going up. Everything's going up, and obviously there's the decarbonisation and the deindustrialization, and like shutting down Port Talbot steelworks. Obviously
Yeah.
now we are now the start of the industrial revolution 150 odd years ago, and now we can't even make our own steel. We've got to fully import it because of what they recently shut down, and it just shocks me how many people just now when you start mentioning all this, they either just want to bury their heads in the sand and not, confront it, or they just simply won't see it for whatever reason. It really does shock me.
Well, that's one of the main industries we want to bring back is like hard steel because we need to be self-sufficient. We cannot be relying because if, say for hypothetically speaking, if World War III was to pop off, where are we getting all our supplies from? Where are we getting all our munitions from? Where are we going to even be doing any of our training? Because we're not going to be able to we're not going to be able to create any of our own weapons, any of our own armaments. We're just going to be stuck. Who'd have thought back in the 90s when you had beauty queens asking for world peace that in 2025 it would be nationalists standing up there being like, I just want peace in the world. Do you know?
Yeah, it's because of and that's just because of how many problems as well that we've got at home. And I think Julian Assange said it really well. Is that the goal is not for the war to be won, the war is to be continuous. Because obviously there's no money for those big entities in a war that is finished, so they just got to find some way to keep the war going. And I think that's what the dossier that Alistair Campbell and those guys that led us
Yeah.
into the war in Iraq and those kinds of things, and that he still has the goal to call everybody else on X and all of those things. I'd be like, just maybe sit this one out.
Yeah, he has no
Maybe just sit
shame.
this one out.
He has no shame that he, like, I know some of us say that it's over 1 million people died because of him, but there's like, what is it, like, he has no shame that 400,000 people were put to death because of him, because he lied just to make it fit with what Netanyahu was saying about them having nuclear weapons, the exact same that he said about Iran for like 20 years.
All right, okay. I wasn't aware of the influence of Netanyahu or anything like that. It's the first time I've heard him mentioned with regards to this issue. First time I've ever heard him mentioned.
Yeah, you can flick through. You see his videos where he's sat in front of Congress and he says to them that there is no doubt that that the Iraq has WMDs. They're so close to having I guarantee you they will have WMDs, and it's like, come on, mate. Do you know? You watch it back now, and the only person, when you look at those congressional hearings, the only person who seems to have been honest with anyone is George Galloway. His interview against Congress, where they're trying to say that he's friends with Saddam Hussein, was incredible. He just shreds them.
Yeah, it was a reality check for me when a lot of the things that I see Galloway post, with regards to his politics, I have
Yeah.
a tendency to, not, just completely I'm on the other side of things. But, you see, it's just this kind of thing where, like, you post something, I'm like,
I know.
fuck, I hate that I agree with you.
I know. You're like, you've
I
got to
hate that I.
like it. You're like,
Ah.
Try not. That's
I'll quote it and I'll say, I hate whoever brought me to the situation that made me agree with George Galloway or whoever it is. I hate whoever brought me to this, but it's my acknowledgement. But yeah, so I didn't realize that. Again, first time I'd ever heard that was mentioned. I'll have to go look at that speech or whatever it is. Was that around the time of when we were going into
yeah, they're all on.
Iraq back inside of like 2001ish?
Yeah, they're all on YouTube, mate.
Okay, I'll go have a look at that. That's interesting. How are we doing? Okay, we're about the hour mark. It's been a great conversation. It's been really, really eye-opening in a lot of ways, and a lot of good stuff has been discussed. The one thing with regards to remigration, obviously the policies that Homeland have laid out for it are all freely available for people to go and listen to, and stuff like that. The only thing that and again, due to it might be, I'm not sure about to ask somebody in the party infrastructure or whatever it be, but what comes after that? Because Steve Laws shared something on X, and it was a reaction to a meme that somebody had made where I think he generated, it was like an AI generated of like a Homeland remigration office, and it was like this stylized cartoony image, making it look really nice. And then I think somebody created another one, and it was like, the fiction versus reality. And the reality one was like the same office, but it was like decrepit, and there was plants in there, all overgrown and stuff like that. And he actually quoted that, I believe, and said that, "Oh no, that's just great. That just means the office has done its job and it's not needed anymore." And it almost put me in the frame of mind of like it put me immediately in the frame of mind of what America is doing at the moment with the Department of Government Efficiency, where they brought this department in with the express goal of after a certain period of time, it's not going to be needed anymore and it's going to be gone. So what will the landscape look like in the UK, and with concerns people may have with like the vacancies that would be needed to fill due to things that have been filled by immigration? Has Homeland considered that?
Yeah, so the biggest one, people say, oh, the NHS will collapse without immigration. The only reason there's so many immigrants working in the NHS now is because our population is so big. And it's also to keep up with the foreign population that's coming in. So if we get rid of because someone did or got an AI program to do it, that if we were to remove after remigration, we've removed all the immigrants, would the NHS collapse? And it's like, no, because the NHS's workload would shrink with the population as well. But when it comes to what we're going to be doing economically, we are really behind the fact that we need to get back to hard industries. We need kids going back to college. And when I say college, I mean like a trade school, learning trades like they used to. So they've actually got some real life independence again. And that's what we used to be so good for. Because our ground is so naturally rich, we produce coal, we can produce coal and steel probably better than most people in the world. And we've also got our oil industries and that, but we're going to be pumping it back into schooling. Yeah, and we're pretty much going to have to rebuild our homeland. But the quickest way to get remigration done, I should say this, and it's what Steve Laws always says, quickest way to get remigration done is to privatize it. Because if you privatize it, they're going to move a lot quicker than we could in the government.
Yeah, because I think that there's a bit more of an incentive there, and you use that word privatization, especially around here. It brings up, especially with the older generation, like we were saying before, getting stuck in their ways. You use that term privatization around these areas where we had the mines and all stuff like that. People really don't like that term because it brings back like things like Margaret Thatcher and those kinds of people with the privatization and the effects that she tried to do. But coming from obviously a generation where all that's past now, and it brings back to again people getting stuck in their ways, especially the older generation being like people around my parts. They've been Labour all their life, and they've said if the one of them always said, if I vote Tory, that my dad would come out of his grave and beat me up. It's that kind of tribal element that's still here. But what
So,
would the
sorry.
incentivization of privatization provide? Go on.
Yeah, so it's just before it slips your mind, you're saying about Labour there. A lot of our the older members of the Homeland Party are old left wingers, old Labour, and it's so mind blowing for me because I was too young to know what they were like back then. But the when you speak to them, I'm like, we have so much in common compared to me and the lefties of today. The left wing,
Mm.
like Labour back then, we're just for the working man. That's why our policy team have got people who were old left wingers in there. That's why a lot of our what helps write our policies in a way that's going to benefit our people, because that people have that socialist working class element. Not socialist as in caring for absolutely everybody on this planet, but caring about your own community. So yeah, we've got
Mm.
people. It's nuts when they say like, "Oh yeah, I'm an old left winger." Like one of the other boys from the northeast, he's a union rep, and like you'd never expect, because people think of Homeland, they think of us as far right, but we're not. We don't. Whatever we need to be for the best of our people is where we will shift. Our end goal will always be our people. Do you know? So our journey might change, but we will always push the best for our people. We will never care about keeping another set of people happy.
No, yeah, I understand that, and it's almost like it's again, and it's kind of a problem as well when you think of things like left and right and those kind of absolutes in a way with certain issues, because you know there's certain things that I can't remember who said it, but somebody who is on X, and she naturally said she's naturally more conservative in most things and like more like pro business, pro privatization, those kinds of things. But then there's certain things which she, like national energy, I think was the word that was the example that she used, which she think, you know, in her opinion, wasn't the best to put in like the privatization element due to the incentives they would provide, and maybe that's better off run by you know, more of like a state entity, provided it's not, you know, the horrendously corrupt entity that we have nowadays. But you know, it almost seems like it's designed to be adaptable in a way. Like it's not all, you know, right, it's not all, you know, left. There's like a mix of different perspectives, and ultimately it's going to be which one is decided that is the best for the people and best for the nation. And in that way you sort of don't have that tribal element of like left and right, is what it's sounding like as
Yeah,
well,
yeah, exactly.
which is really, really good.
Yeah,
And yeah, because that tribalism can really, you know, derail conversations, especially as well. And it's why a lot of the mainstream media, you know, talking heads for Ukraine, the minute you try and put a different opinion across, they'll call you Putin stan and all of the rest of it. But yeah, I suppose, yeah, the incentivization of privatizing it in this way. Do you have any views yourself on how that would be the best for it? 'Cause I'm aware that Steve Laws has been the person to you know, mostly make that statement, so I don't want you to think that I'm putting words in your
yeah.
mouth or anything
No, so
like that.
the way that I can see it being better if it's privatized is there'll be money in it, which will make people will make companies, which will have to be British companies. They will have to be
Mm.
like, it will have to be beneficial to our people for it to be privatized. So companies like Ryanair, who are who are are they Ireland, sorry, aren't they? They're based out of Ireland, but they said that they'd do something like that, and we would 100% give it to a company, to Ryanair, to run the flight side of it, because they've already got the infrastructure in place, so you don't need to set up anything new. They've already got the staff in place, so you don't need to train anybody up. Whereas if we were to do it through the government, you're going to have so much red tape to get through.
Mm.
You're gonna have to train, you're gonna have to spend your money that could go onto our people into building training facilities and all this. Whereas if you go private, you're saving money immediately by not having to build from the ground up.
No, cool. And I think the biggest thing as well is the ideological element. If it's and again, I don't want to say it's driven by money, because then it doesn't sound great when you say it like that. But we've seen how ideologically driven the government can be and how it can turn. And really, in that entire infrastructure, you got to imagine all it would take maybe is one bad actor, so to speak, or one person that's not on the team working against the team, whatever it may be, in the entire thing can come down, so to speak. And as you mentioned, all of the red tape and all of the stuff like that. And we're seeing that out in America at the moment with all of the judges and stuff like that are trying to stop Trump from doing these deportation flights of even like MS-13 gang members. You know what I mean? So you'd have to deal with all of this stuff. So yeah, I can absolutely see that. But yeah, I'm really seeing it's hard to make the case that more immigration is going to be good for the nation with how much it's already brought everything down, and it was really good to have that sort of myth dispelled when you said it about the NHS, because it's very easy to just be like, oh, we need these people for the NHS and those kinds of things due to the burden that's on the NHS. It's very easy to forget that the more people you bring in, the more burden is on the NHS. And if you have a net emigration of people or whatever it is, then there's less burden on the NHS. So yeah, that was really, really enlightening. I don't really think I really have anything more that I wanted to go over. Ultimately, really, what's sort of coming up in the future for yourself and for Homeland and those kinds of things, really.
So for myself, I think we've got tree planting, the whole of the northeast of Scotland activist team are getting together on Sunday, and then in 2 weeks we've got the Remigration conference, which is going to be sick. I'm absolutely buzzing for that. So we've got Leanne Cotra coming, who was a member of European Parliament for the AFD. She's still part of the AFD, and then we've got Reynold Calmus, I'm not sure how you pronounce his last name, but he's a French nationalist, and he's class as well. It's going to be brilliant. So people are like, oh, you're saying that it's just about your people, then why have you got foreign people coming to speak at your event? Because, like I'm saying, we want to hear how other nationalists are making their nations better, because if we can find a way to implement that for our people that's going to improve our people's lives, then why would we not want to take that on board? It's very, very narrow-minded to think that we are going to know best all the time. It's very narrow-minded to think that our ethnicity makes us better than everyone else, that we're not going to be able to learn from others.
Well, you heard it right there, folks. That is straight from the mouth of the far right, Nazi. No, I'm only joking. I'm being sarcastic, obviously.
No, it's cool.
But it doesn't. I don't know. It doesn't strike me as that way, and that's something where I feel this conversation and conversations like these are going to be really, really important. It's really easy to use the smear tactics and stuff like that, and. I've been following. We mentioned them at the start, like Britain First and stuff like that, for a while. And I think for a good while, especially, I think their outlook was pretty good. They were as far as I'm aware, they were starting to make some good inroads into like Northern Ireland and places like that, and really, waking people up to some of the dangers that we face. But a lot of stuff that's come up at the moment. It just, see it again, very well timed, and the video that was released, it was the immediate thought that I had on it. It was like the video of like the call between Kenny and Paul. There was like a video of like a call that got put up or something like that, and Paul said, how about this? You tell me where to meet you tomorrow, and you can show your chest, and it's what spawned all these memes, right? It's what spawned all of these memes. Like the one you shared, I don't know a lot about Kenny. I've been following Paul for a little while. I tend to like Paul, but the memes. If I see a funny meme, even if it's somebody I like, I'm gonna laugh, right? I'm gonna laugh, and the memes that were coming out of it were hilarious. Like the one you shared with like The Shining from The Shining.
Show me your chest.
But it was like, but it was just like when he says meet me tomorrow, and I'd be like, right, Paul's obviously, I would imagine, extremely busy, has a family with all his activism, busy guy. Kenny, I would imagine the same with his activism. And he says, you meet me tomorrow. I'm like, that just seems to be, there's something off about that. Why are you trying to get this video,
Yeah.
and then saying, meet me here tomorrow on such short notice, like, might be a legitimate reason why he couldn't do that. But then is it because then you get the soundbite being like, oh, Kenny wouldn't meet me, and it's like a confirmation of the allegations? That just struck me as very off, and it's almost like something that, I don't want to say that he's part of the left, but it's like a tactic that the left would do against somebody who they would perceive as their political opponent, like a smear tactic. So I don't like seeing that on you know, my side of it in a lot of ways, because again, it just discredits the nationalist side, the patriotic side, so to speak. But yeah, that Remigration conference is on the 28th of April. Is it 28th of April? 26th. I did see it on the website, so we look forward to seeing what comes out of that. But yeah, that's pretty much all I have. Where can people find you, and where can people find out more about the things that you do and the things that Homeland do and stuff like that?
Yeah, so if you wanted to follow my journey as an activist, I'm on Twitter. It's at J_A_Fernie, or on TikTok, I am the.other.opinion. And I'm JAFernie on Rumble, and the other opinion with JAFernie on YouTube.
Cool. But yeah, this has been amazing. So
thank you for having me
certainly
on.
answered a lot of my, no problem, and it certainly answered a lot of my questions. I hope it answered a lot of your guys's as well. And obviously will spark a lot of the things that we talked about, will hopefully spark a lot more discussion, which is ultimately, you know, what we want. More discussion is more often than not a very, very good thing, and people that are often trying to stifle discussion are often doing it for, you know, not very good reasons. But yeah, thank you very much, Josh. I really appreciate this.
Yeah, thank you for having me on. I'll go and tell the world that we've just done a wee interview, so to expect it.
Awesome. Thank you very much.
Right, no worries.
Have a good night, guys.
day.
We'll see you.
See you later.
You too. Thank you very much. Have a good night, guys. We'll see you next time. And there you have it, ladies and gentlemen. My sit down with Mr. Josh Fernie. I hope you enjoyed it. Hope you found it useful and informative. The two questions I'd like to propose to you in closing. Number one, it is a prominent source of argument and has been decried by others, even on the right-hand side of the political spectrum, who have been advocating for remigration and these kinds of things. And that is pursuing this ethno-nationalist state or ethno-nationalist agendas. Is it wrong to do that as part of these remigration efforts in Britain? Is that wrong for the British people to do and to pursue? Finally then, I'd like to ask you, the viewer, what you think the biggest threat is facing Britain today. Is it our own government? Is it our own laziness and apathy? Is it Islam? Whatever it may be. Is it religion as a whole? Leave your thoughts down in the comments. I'd love to hear them. I'd love to spark some good, positive discourse. Negative discourse, at the end of the day, is only going to be more of our downfall. We're in enough trouble as it is, as a nation and as peoples, so we really need to start fostering positive discourse at the very least. I'm looking forward to hearing your thoughts. With that, guys, we'll catch up with you again soon. Thank you very much for your time, and have a good one. Godspeed.